Hello, Janela. This is my feedback to last week's evidence paragraph. Okay, let's see what you did. Now, first of all, let me just say this was the first attempt. You did it without a model, so actually, for a first attempt, this is really good. What you did here. Now that you have a model, go back to it and study it very carefully. Hopefully, today's small group tutorial also helped clarify some things. And next week there's another model coming up and more practice. So I think this time next week you will be in an even better position. But just looking at this without even a model, you still did a very good job. So let's take this bit by bit. In the video, the speaker argues that women should be empowered in the workplace. Now, okay, as the fourth supporting idea, the two pieces of evidence for his claim. Sure. Okay, the exams, female students graph show New York. Okay, fine. Yeah, this is all very good. I would just say women should be empowered in the workforce, in the workplace. He says that, it's a quote. Okay, fine. If that's what he said, no problem. I would just phrase it. You just phrase it with your own words, instead of simply taking a quote directly, right? What's the supporting idea? That more opportunities should be given to women who actually have the ability to work in the tech field, something like that, right? Now, by the way, all of this that I've selected in the actual exam, this will be part of your identification paragraph. Remember how we start with an identification paragraph, which is 75 to 100 words, and then the next step is to write the evidence paragraph, which is separate. Okay, so you've done a very good job here identifying the pieces of evidence and the supporting idea, but again, try to rephrase the idea in your own words. So now let's see what the evidence paragraph is. First evidence. Okay. Sufficiency. Exams. Not sufficient because only one graph without citation. Okay, very good. What is missing? Needs an academic reliable graph with citation. Very good. I think it's a very good idea to talk about what is missing. If you find that it's not sufficient, you have to say the speaker could have included. Now you've written it kind of like as notes. Obviously, when you come to the right of the paragraph, you will not include these bolded words, and it won't be so much in the form of notes. It will be sentences like the speaker could have included blah blah blah, right? This is a bit more like notes, but that's fine. It's actually pretty solid what you have here. Not sufficient because only one graph without citation. For me, it's not so much that it's not cited. Think about this in terms of the supporting idea that he's proving, not so much whether it's a citation or not a citation. Do you see what I mean? Okay, it's fine. You can say it's nice, but it's not cited, but that does not make it sufficient or insufficient. That does not make it relevant or irrelevant. That just means that it's not cited. You see? So we usually look for something deeper, something like this piece of evidence is not enough to prove the supporting idea because blah blah. You see? Something a little bit deeper. So what is he trying to prove? That women should be empowered in the workplace. Why is that not sufficient? Well, if that's what he's proving, what else should he have included to prove that women should be empowered? I like this. More surveys, right? Again, when you come to the writing of the paragraph, you have to say more surveys proving what? It's not just enough to say more surveys. More sources from data, more data from surveys showing what? right? Surveys showing what? So you have to continue. Showing that blah blah blah, right? Relevance, partially relevant. This graph is just about one high school situation. Okay. Is it about one high school situation? Or is it about high schools in general? If it's about one high school situation, that's very good to talk about, to mention in the representativeness section, because it's only one school. Does that mean it's a typical school? Partially relevant. Here I think you can just attack it along other lines. He's trying to prove that women should be empowered. Maybe in what way is percentage of female students, in what way is that graph relevant? It's only partially relevant, right? That doesn't necessarily prove that women should be empowered. Again, I think the idea you've started with is kind of tricky here. You see, that's what makes it a little bit difficult. If you start with a more clearly expressed supporting idea, then you can analyze whether the evidence is representative in relation to that idea, whether it's relevant in relation to the idea, whether it's sufficient, again, in relation to the supporting idea. So it's very crucial to start with a clear supporting idea. Here I'm not very sure about this. Relevant is partially because it's from one school situation. Okay, so I mean, I guess you can say this, but I would just attack the link between the evidence and the idea, right? For representativeness, it's not representative because there's only one case. Now, I think this is much better here. Is an example of a high school representative of all. Okay, so that's very good. You see, here we're on the right track. Then you've continued with the second evidence and so forth. Now here, this is way too many words, right? So when you write that paragraph, you would write fuller sentences, which will probably take you to 400 words or something if you continue in this vein. Of course, a lot of it is identification, so obviously you're going to throw that, so your word limit will be reduced. But you can just kind of take all the evidence together, right? You cannot just, because if there's more than one or two or three or four pieces of evidence, if you evaluate each one of them in the three aspects, it's going to take you a lot longer than 200 words. So you have to find ways to cut corners. Either, there's two strategies. Either analyze all the evidence together, whether it's sufficient, relevant, and representative, or if you're going to examine different pieces of evidence, then you can examine them. One could be examined under sufficiency, another one could be examined under representativeness, another one could be examined under relevance. You see, you can pick and choose, but talking about the three aspects for each single piece of evidence is just, it's impossible in 200 words. Okay. Now, as far as sufficiency, sorry, I said one for sufficiency, but for sufficiency, you obviously have to include the whole body. Is all the evidence taken together sufficient, right? For sufficiency, we examine all the evidence together. But for relevance and representativeness, you can pick and choose. Again, here, another strategy would be, instead of examining a lot of pieces of evidence, make the supporting idea narrow enough so that you can examine only one or two pieces of evidence. You see, that's going to be much easier. If you narrow down the supporting idea, then you will narrow down the evidence used by the speaker. The larger the supporting idea, the more evidence the speaker uses. and the more difficult it is for you to write a paragraph. So that's, I think, a very good strategy. Start with a clear, narrowly focused supporting idea. Maximum 3 pieces of evidence. Even that may be too much. 2 or 3 maximum. And then for sufficiency, you can say, you can examine the whole body of evidence. Is all of them 3 or 2 pieces taken together, is that enough? And then for relevance and representativeness, it's up to you. You can pick and choose, so you don't end up going over the word limit. Okay. Second evidence. Academic journal article named Gender Equality Paradox in Science, Technology, Engineering and Math Education. Again, this is for the identification, right? Okay, sufficiency. Sufficient because it's, again, the fact that it's an academic journal doesn't make it sufficient in itself. It just makes it maybe reliable, but when we're evaluating relevancy, sufficiency, and representativeness, just the fact that it's academic doesn't automatically make it sufficient, relevant, or reliable, or representative, right? All of this is just about authority and credibility, but we're not discussing those here. So in your paragraph, we don't talk about, you can mention it, but that doesn't mean it's sufficient. Do you see? So this is more about credibility or reliability or authority, however you want to put it, but that does not automatically make it sufficient. It's relevant because there are more graphs which are related to the situation in this article. Okay, fine, but I would explain this very clearly. What do you mean to this situation in the article? More graphs which present information or data on, and just be very specific here, right? On what? Representativeness. In this article, authors used the PISA survey. Okay, fine. Again, this is for the identification. They used the most recent data set. Okay, 72. So this is relevant enough. But remember, we're talking about representative, not relevant here, right? Actually, it's a good point that if it's current, it's relevant. Sure, you can mention that, but that's under relevance, not under representativeness, right? So for representative, there is a very good document that we shared with you a few weeks ago. Remember, we asked you to read it. It's on Google Classroom. It discusses representativeness in detail. It's basically about typicality. How typical is the example given? How typical is that example, right? Does it represent the average, the normal school, or that's what representativeness usually means. Now again here, these are very good notes, by the way, but you do need to start with a more manageable supporting idea, and then some of this will go toward your identification paragraph, some of this will go into your evidence paragraph. So this is a very good kind of first step. These are kind of rough notes, preparation for the paragraph, and from here you can actually build those 2 paragraphs, the identification and the evaluation. Go back to these models and study them very carefully, and you should be in better shape sometime next week. Okay, Danila, I hope this is helpful. This is a very good start, by the way.